This is normally where we do a read to tell you to go to patreon.com/recesscastproductions to support our show. And usually it's a fun gimmick to, it's meant to not come off as repetitive as some other shows. Not easy when you're covering more serious films like this one. So to that end, we invite you to check out some of our playlists on the YouTube channel as well. We have several different ones for years of seasons, and even for sorting into different genres, like war films, for example. We aren't going to do all of them anytime soon, but for the more serious affairs, they'll be in big collections like this one to kind of help you, find the ones that we actually, take a little more seriously. And if you feel up to it, we'd appreciate anything you can give us over at patreon.com/recesscastproductions to help keep the show rolling. Again, thank you very much, and enjoy the show. Hoist the flags, hold the line, lessons ever lost to time. Now we sing for you, depart the bonds of war. The front lines may be lost, but there is one thing our enemy didn't account for. They didn't account for the After Credits Cast, the only film podcast to slip by those sneaky sausages of the German forces to deliver you the latest and greatest film commentary. And those are some delicious sausages. I'm your host, AJ Waseska, and I'm joined by Ryan Metters. Ryan, how you doing today?
Very good, very good.
The intro song for this week is Miracle of Sound's Pawns of War. A very good song,
these guys.
And very fitting, very fitting. If you want to follow us on different platforms of choice, you can go to Patreon, YouTube, Pippa, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. It's written right there. I read it wrong every so often. Google Play, iHeartRadio, and many, many more. Find us out there. We're somewhere out there. Ryan, are you ready for what might be the last Nolan film unless Tenet comes out in theaters?
I am. I'm hoping it's not the last because I don't want to end on this boring ass movie. But that's fine.
Oh, shots fired. Now we're taking to the final film of the Nolan series, again, unless Tenet really does release. We're talking about 2017's Dunkirk. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, the film grossed a worldwide total of $526 million, which is over 5 times what it cost.
I don't know why, but all right.
I mean, it was a cheap movie. 100 million. Easy 100 million.
Cheap movie at 100 million.
I mean, I guess that's fair. We did do Following, which is like, what, $10? The cast includes a bunch of people I've never heard of before and a few that I do remember, such as Fionn Whitehead, Aneurin Barnard, listen, you have a bunch of letters later that I don't know how they work. Damien Bernard, Barry Keoghan, Jack Lowden, Kenneth Branagh, Harry Styles, Cillian Murphy. We still don't really have a clear answer on that one. And then Tom Hardy. Of course, gotta have Tom Hardy.
Bane. Yep.
Bane, Scarecrow. If only we had Heath Ledger still alive, he would have been in this one probably. Got a whole trifecta there. The movie boasts 67 wins in various awards, including Best Achievements in Film Editing, Sound Editing, and Sound Mixing. Best Sound from the BAFTA Awards. The previous awards are from Oscars. An AFI Film of the Year Award. IGN's People's Choice Award for the Best Director and Best Drama. And several more critic associations, none of which I will take time to read here.
Because they're all irrelevant.
I mean,
anyway.
There is some truth to that.
Well, alas, despite this seriously unfun film, I have some quote-unquote fun facts. According to Sir Kenneth Branagh, roughly 30 Dunkirk survivors who were in their mid-90s attended the premiere in London, England. When asked about the movie, they felt it accurately captured the event, but that the soundtrack was louder than the actual bombardment, a comment that greatly amused Nolan. That's cute. That's good. Next up, speaking about the narrative structure in Premiere Magazine, Nolan stated, "For the soldiers who embarked in the conflict, the events took place in different temporalities. On land, some stayed 1 week stuck on the beach. On the water, events lasted a maximum of a day. And if you were flying to Dunkirk, the British Spitfires would carry an hour of fuel. To mingle these different versions of the story, one had to mix the temporal strata, hence the complicated structure. Even if the story is very simple, do not repeat it to the studio. It will be my most experimental film. It didn't work. Don't do it again. Anyway,
admittedly, I didn't understand that temporal bullshit he was doing until I saw this. Until I read this fun fact. I'm like, oh, I can kind of make sense of what you were going for there, because the movie never really swerves back to remind us of what that was all about.
Well, I mean, it does start off it does start off each of those timelines by saying boats. It does one day.
It does, but it never really addresses them again at the end of anywhere else in the film, and I'm kind of left wondering. So are these guys gonna mingle up? What's gonna happen here? Yada yada yada. And so I like that there was actually some clarifications to what those were supposed to mean, because the first time I watched it, I'm like, I don't understand what this is all about here yet.
Well, you know Nolan. It's always going to be some timey-wimey bullshit.
Yeah, it's his trademark.
Yep. Next up, Nolan focused on the quote-unquote realism of every aspect. For many of the cockpit shots, he had a two-seat plane rigged so that the front canopy and the cockpit looked like a real Spitfire, but with non-functioning flying controls, with the actual pilot flying the plane from the rear cockpit, so the actor could play the pilot as the plane actually flew. Now, he also mounted front and rear-facing cameras on the reconditioned Spitfire. In addition, he had cameramen floating in the water with the actors. Pretty good. Yeah. Pretty good.
Quite a lot of shit to make a realistic plane flying thing.
Indeed. Okay. Well, in my final fun fact, in regards to the Battle of Dunkirk's importance, Nolan stated his opinion. This is an essential moment in the history of World War II. If this evacuation had not been a success, Great Britain would not have been obliged to capitulate, and the whole world would have been lost or would have known a different fate. The Germans would have undoubtedly conquered Europe. The U.S. would not have returned to war, and it is a true point of rupture in the war and in the history of the world, a decisive moment. And the success of the evacuation allowed Sir Winston Churchill to impose the idea of a moral victory, which allowed him to galvanize his troops, like the civilians, and to impose a spirit of resistance, while the logic of this sequence should have been that of surrender. Militarily, it is a defeat. On the human plane, it is a colossal victory.
But, I mean, you still lost, though.
Yeah, they still lost, though.
Wait, that's supposed to be positive. Fuck. Sorry, there was an easy joke there. I had to take it. Initial thoughts. Here we go. Ryan, I need to be perfectly, 100% entirely honest with you. This may be the best film Nolan has ever made.
Sorry.
And while his signature styles are a little tough to find here and there, this is unmistakably a Nolan film through and through. 100%. Genuine, bona fide Nolan film.
Okay. In my initial thoughts, this movie felt like an assignment given to a third-year art student where they said you have to do a movie about war in whatever style you want to do. So it's definitely a Nolan film. I don't think it fits the war motif, really, but Nolan definitely told it in his signature style, which made it hard as hell to follow, but had big sweeping music in places where I'm supposed to feel things, so hooray, I guess.
And the best part of that music, too, is it was louder than the actual bombardment, man. You felt like you were there.
Yep.
Yep. Let's get a synopsis out of the way here. The film takes place over 3 different perspectives in 3 different time frames. So let's check in with our Beach Boys first.
Sorry.
Evacuation is underway as the German military surrounds the city of Dunkirk. Soldiers from both British and French militias are stranded, with bombers breaking through the lines and knocking out what boats they can to keep the boys stranded. We follow 2 young men, one French, who try to sneak aboard a ship carrying wounded and dying. They're told to get the fuck off because they're not wounded or dying. Fair enough. Ship explodes anyway, and the boys have to scramble to find a new rescue. Several failed attempts later, they find themselves on an abandoned boat, waiting for the tide to roll in and carry them out to sea. Germans shoot the hell out of that ship, though, causing it to take on water. The French kid is accused of being a German spy by One Direction. It doesn't matter. This plan sucked anyway. The boys escape near death again, waiting for their next way off this bloody beach. Eventually, the people of our second plot arrive to save the day. In our second verse, we have some British blokes taking to the sea on their vacation boat to go and save whoever they can floating in the water or on the beach. Apparently, this is some kind of Good Samaritan thing they did back then. Never been in a war, wouldn't know. Along the way, they pick up Scarecrow, big mistake, who accidentally kills one of the kids on board in a bout of PTSD, essentially. He wants to turn the boat around because Dunkirk is not worth saving. The guy driving the boat disagrees. They eventually arrive as the pilots from Plot C are gunning down the last of the enemy fighters and have broken through. They manage to get their boat, along with dozens of others, to the stranded boats and soldiers and deliver them to quote-unquote safety from the shores of Dunkirk. Headlines are written about this, and a moral victory is celebrated by Churchill as the turning point of the war. We get to our final verse, in which we follow the exploits of ace pilot Tom Hardy. He shoots down some Germans in the course of an hour as they escape the main fight to shoot our boys on the beach, see Plot A. Tom only has about an hour of fuel, but uses it wisely to save everyone in the previous two plots. His story ends with him taking an emergency landing on Dunkirk once his fuel runs out, after successfully keeping the enemy fighters at bay for the successful escapes of Plot A and B. However, he is taken prisoner by the Germans, likely to be experimented on and given black goo in hopes of making at least one successful Spider-Man spin-off. We can only hope.
I would posit that we should take him to make a Red Skull spinoff. I would definitely see him as Red Skull.
But we already have two different Red Skulls. I don't know if we need to add a third person in that mix.
Touche.
I'm trying to think who else you could play in Marvel that would be interesting. I guess I've heard people say they pitched him as Wolverine. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Yeah. Man, I could do a whole episode just fan casting Marvel movies. That'd be fun. Ryan, what do you think of the movie?
So I remember last week when we talked about Interstellar, and you said that Nolan really does his best work when he is given some like fantastical element to really get into like the subconscious of stuff like that. So this is a complete 180 from that because he's decided to do a completely grounded movie here. And I definitely am missing that like mind-bendy, subconscious-laden, story-driven narrative. He definitely keeps fucking around with time because that's his bread and butter, but, I mean, I had a hard time getting off the ground with the movie and really, like, becoming engrossed in it because it was so grounded. It was too grounded.
But you see, Ryan, this is truly a Nolan film, though. It has all the hallmark trademarks of it. It has the grounded reality that he adheres to, like almost like glue. He has the non-linear storytelling, which of course we absolutely love in every film he's done, every time. And it also isn't necessarily a film that focuses on So you say that there's no psychological and or metatextual depth to it. And there may not be metatextual depth. I mean, it's a history film. It's a little hard to do metatextual with history. I'll give him that. But I do think it dives into the psychological aspects of war better than most films do. And the reason I say that is because think about the beginning of the film again. Nolan opts to not show any blood or gore, which is present in most other wartime films, often showcasing the physical horrors of war itself. Instead, he focuses on the mental and moral condition of the people at work here. Why do you think he would choose that angle over anything else?
Because he doesn't like the sight of blood.
Oh, shots fired. No.
People were getting shot up left and right in Inception. I didn't see any blood.
I'm trying to think back to it. You might be right on that one. No. There was blood. The one guy, the let him fight guy. He was blood.
Yeah, that blood was solely to remind you, oh, by the way, he's dying.
Absolutely.
In this dream.
Absolutely. No. So the idea here, I think, is to focus not so much on the physical violence of war, because, Ryan, you and I, we've seen a dozen movies from World War II. We can count them on our hands and toes. There's so many of them that we've done. Not for the show, but just like watched in general.
Yeah.
And so this one is opting to do something a little different. Instead of focusing on what you've already seen, what you've already been given, why not focus on the mental stresses and the PTSD aspects and the moral conflict within themselves and with each other in this wartime effort. It to me, it tells a more interesting story than it could than just focusing on, oh, these guys are dying, oh, there's an arm over there, there's a trail of blood over here, oh man, oh, it's so bad, you know. It's like Star Wars, Ryan. There's too much blood and destruction everywhere.
I suppose to each their own, I guess.
I will say there is one thing unique about this World War II film that I didn't expect, Ryan. I don't know if you caught it, but did you notice there was not really much or any actual representation of a German soldier anywhere in the film?
Yeah, not physically seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were all there was always kind of like an unseen, I think they did that to ratchet up the tension, because you never really can attribute like the danger to one specific person. Actually, nope. I'm lying. You see a German soldier at the very end when they capture when they capture Tom Hardy.
Yeah, you see that, but I mean, like,
ha! Invalidated.
But 99% of the film, there's not a single German soldier.
Sure, okay, 99%, I guess. If we're not gonna go for completionists, then sure.
But I'm just saying, like, compared to every other World War II film you've seen, they're everywhere. They are the bad guys. They are omnipresent. They are in your face. They're the murderers. They're walking down the street. You can't get away from them. Here, they're almost like they're not existent, but they're always there still. They're always a constant threat. It's just a very interesting decision that I didn't expect to see in a World War II film. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Why do you think he would make that decision?
If I was inclined to be generous, I would say he was looking to use that to kind of ratchet up the tension in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, because rather than have it towards discrete, specific people that you can see coming, and if they're there, they're there, and if they're not, they're not. Instead of doing that, you kind of leave them nebulous, and always, like you said, you never see them, but the threat of them is ever present. So the threat of them, you only know they're coming by either the sound of gunfire or the screams of their airplane, and by the time you hear either of those, it's more than likely too late for you. So they're just living under the constant threat of this unseen enemy. And I think he was leaning on that in order to really drive home the stress that these men were under.
Gotcha.
If I was inclined to be generous.
Of course. And you aren't required to be by any means.
Yep.
Aside from what the film shows, what do you know about the Battle of Dunkirk and its historical significance?
Not a goddamn thing.
Same here.
I learned it all from this movie.
I like to pride myself as a bit of a history buff, but I gotta admit, there's a lot of shit that happens in a given war, like World War II, a big, all-encompassing, multi-year war, that I unfortunately do not have a lot of context for. So I was learning a lot of new stuff here. Again, with the narrative bent to it as well. So not 100% accurate, of course, but I learned more about it here than I did in school. So there's that. Eat shit, school system. Didn't teach you shit. Gotta get closer to my mic. My wave level's a little low, so I don't know if I was getting too quiet there. Ryan, how do you feel about the non-linear storytelling of this film, and does it work well here as it does in other Nolan works? Why and why not?
Well, with the explanation that is, the amount of time actually spent in the midst of the battle for these three different storylines, and then having to intersperse it this way in order for the story to be compelling or gripping. I definitely understand why they went there, because it would be a pretty shitty film if you just had like 2 hours and 15 minutes of the guys on the beach, and then like 30 minutes of the guys in the boat, and then like in the last 2 minutes Tom Hardy comes in and saves everyone. That would kind of suck. So having that kind of interspersed out actually is a pretty clever way to tell all of the stories as one cohesive unit, if you do it right. But I think it wasn't presented clearly enough, or at least it wasn't alluded to like more than once. So I think Nolan tends to fall into the trap of thinking his viewers are as smart as he is, and sometimes it's not true. So you're just kind of left scratching your head, like, wait, I thought that guy died already. Wait, no, he's supposed to be on the yacht. Why is he on the U-boat? And then you lose the plot.
Can't tell if I should be insulted since I'm one of the ones who didn't quite catch this first turn. No. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, when we discussed this during the fun facts, I didn't quite follow the nonlinear storytelling in this film, and I know I'm supposed to be the positive guy, but I want to take a second of honesty here. Be honest here. I didn't quite care for how they set it up. I think you're right. There's a bit of execution issue here. I'm not sure exactly how you could improve it, but I would say that the lack. So you are given the three different timestamps: the week, the day, and the hour. You're given the locations, or I guess the themes: the mole, the boat, the plane, whatever you want to call it. The problem is, until you get to the final act where all of them finally tie together, none of those title cards really have a lot of context to them. And unless you're familiar with the war and understand what he is trying to set up, it just, none of it makes sense until that last act. And I get that that's kind of par for the course for Nolan films, but in a film where all of it ties together at the end, but they're all taking place over the course of their respective times, but yet don't play off that way, it could definitely be a confusing delivery in general. And I'm not sure how you could have avoided that. I don't know. But it does bring me to another question I want to bring up here. Another criticism that I saw on another blog that actually did interest me a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts on this, Ryan. So, speaking of the 1 day timeline, the one with the boats and shit, apparently there are critics out there who say the film should have focused more on the civilian armada of boats, yachts, steamers, and barges that actually showed up for this event. Because apparently they played a significant role in what happened, and there's actually a lot more stories tied to them that could have easily filled a whole movie. So I guess my question to you is, do you think that would have been worth focusing more attention on, or do you think that giving them the time they had is adequate?
I think giving them the time they had was fine, because it really allowed them to not only focus on the three that initially set sail to try and save these people, but also on Cillian Murphy's character that is shell-shocked and tries to force them to take him home to the point where one of them actually dies. I think focusing on that story is more compelling because it tightens the focus on it and it really makes you get everything out of it. But then also keeping the focus on that one ship can kind of make it feel like there was only one ship, and then the surprising flood of just joy and pride when the entire armada shows up all at once and everybody's like, oh my god, they've come to save us. I think juxtaposing those two things was very smart, because it's if you look at this one ship and just how much pride and how much stuff is going on in this ship, like similar things are happening in all of these ships, and they've all come to rescue you. So I think that was well done. If I was inclined to be generous, that is, of course.
I like how we're both being generous towards each other today. It's a very interesting setup today. Let's see, what else do I got here? How does this compare to other war films you've seen? Where does it fall short, and where does it succeed?
Well, this movie, I think most movies, or at least a lot of the war movies that I've seen, have focused not only on the horrifying realities of war, but also also criticizing the powers that make the wars come into being. And this movie doesn't really do that. Like it goes into it a little bit when people are they're rebelling against the overarching decision to not send more people to rescue them at Dunkirk because they're looking for, like, they're trying to save forces for the next battles to come. But the majority of the movie focuses on the soldiers that are fighting for their lives and the normal people that come to their aid. So it really focuses on the more human aspect of war as opposed to the powers that be and the politics behind it. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm comparing this to other war films. I'm ignoring the obvious frontrunner of Grave of Fireflies because it's hard to compare to that. There's not a lot of films that do what it does.
That's in a league of its own, man.
Yeah. But compared to, like, say, Saving Private Ryan and stuff like that, I would say what interests me most is that it does steer away from your typical blood and gore of war. I think it does tackle the psychology of it a bit in an interesting way. I don't think it's the best I've seen of this one. I know, and I might be misremembering, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember Platoon getting really into the headspace of the characters and really being kind of fucked up a bit. And I know there's other films that take on the PTSD approach like that, but a lot of those seem to be geared more towards Vietnam, where a lot of it became more commonplace to have that issue. Like PTSD was more established as a psychological issue surrounding the events of Vietnam, whereas older wars, you didn't really hear about it as much. At least to my knowledge, you didn't hear about it as much. So I definitely think that showcasing that World War II and events like this definitely fall on that same Vietnam level of, not all wars are winners, not everything's going to be successful, and sometimes everyone just gets fucked up and it sucks. So I do like that it does at least try to not glorify World War II as much as a lot of more American-focused productions do, because we saved the day and everything, apparently. I think where it falls short, though, might be where my next question comes in, Ryan. There aren't any characters. I mean, there are quote-unquote characters, but we don't really ever dive deep into who they are or what they represent. They're just kind of people. And I guess my question is, why do you think that Nolan went that direction with the cast and characters? And do you think it works? Why not?
Well, I think the focus of the movie isn't really to tell specific stories of individuals, but rather the story, like the war itself is the story, or the rescue itself is the story. So we follow protagonists in each of these timelines, but they don't really delve into their character enough to make the story about them, but rather where they were and what they did in this place. So they keep he does that, I think, to keep the focus on the actual event rather than 4 or 5 people that were there. If that makes sense.
No, I get you. And my initial thought about this too ties into the idea that there are no quote unquote heroes in war. Yeah, sure, there are people who do good things and help people out, but at the end of the day, they are all quote unquote soldiers. They're all quote unquote people who are just trying to survive and trying to fight for their country, and thus he strips them of any real significant identity. Yeah, they're still people, and you still have identifiers. You can tell who's who, but we don't really get any names. We have names, but they aren't anything that we embed in our memory super hard. None of these characters stand out as like your Saving Private Ryan characters or your platoon characters. Like none of them really stand out. You know what I mean? And so I think the idea is just to kind of paint them all as like not necessarily faceless soldiers, but just like just generic soldiers who are stuck in a shitty situation, and trying to de-glorify war in a way that most American productions don't. Which again ties back to my last question. I think it's a very interesting way to take things. I don't know if it necessarily works for me because I like stories with characters and whatnot, and how that's mostly why I see films, is to see a narrative with characters unfold. But for a film that seems to have a lack of any traditional characters, it's interesting, an interesting experiment all the same.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
So Ryan, this is a more personal question. Neither of us have actually been involved in a war directly to this day. Hopefully that continues. But Ryan, if a draft were to happen today, what would your reaction be? And would you go out to war?
Well, I would more than likely not be drafted because of asthma and because of my general shape. So I'm glad for that. That being said, I think my feelings on the country have definitely changed over time. I love my country, and I am proud to be an American citizen. But my love for my country has previously been embedded in the ideals that the country was based on. And as time goes on, I feel like we are drifting further and further from those ideals. So a younger me would have been perfectly fine with doing so and defending my country. An older me, not so much. The only way that I would really be okay with it is if I was actually defending my home from an invading force.
That's
then
fair.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's fair. I thought about this. I even asked Amanda, do you think that how would you react if I was drafted to war, something like that? Because I figured, it's the draft still only targets men, as I understand it. I know we haven't used it since Vietnam, but last I checked, it was just men who are forced to go into a draft. So I don't know if they've updated that since then. And my reaction is this: I, as a young man, would probably have not been able to go to war, and I don't really have any physical things hold me back like asthma, but I was definitely a weak, out of shape little man baby, and I don't think I've really changed physically much since then. I'm in better. I think I'm in better shape now in terms of health. Ryan, this is a little off topic here, but I've actually been losing weight quite a bit lately.
I know you've told me. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a job that requires you to move all day and go different places. It's great.
I last I checked, I was down to 187.
Congrats, man! Congrats.
I'm within range. I'm within striking distance of the goal weight, and now it's just a matter of adding muscle to not be such a weak little man baby. But anyway, no. So, that aside, though, currently, and probably you could probably find the same excuse for other instances that could have come up, but under the current administration, I would definitely be of the mindset hey, I'm a conscientious objector. I do not agree with the reasons for war. I do not agree with the man in charge of this war. I refuse to participate under his behalf. And I don't know how that conscious objector thing works 100%, but I would definitely just not partake in it. I would just refuse because I just don't see the benefit in fighting other people. Again, unless you're right, unless we're defending our own home. And I think it just comes down to, like we've discussed before with stuff like Graver Fireflies, I just don't want to hurt people, man. I just don't want to go across the ocean and beat up people for political reasons that I don't agree with. And I don't want to be someone else's puppet or pawn. So, yeah, I would refuse. I respect those who do go to war. I respect those who are soldiers and military men and women who go out to do that stuff. I just couldn't put my own issues aside to make it happen, though.
Yeah, I get that. And I largely agree.
Yeah. So yep, call us cowards if you want, but hey, at least I'm not taking orders from the orange one. So, um, final question, Ryan, and then we can move on to our last segment, sort of. What would you have wanted what more would you have wanted from a Nolan directed war piece?
So here's the thing. I think this movie was definitely told in the most Nolan way possible. It definitely feels like a Christopher Nolan movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I would want anything more from his take on it. I just don't think he should do war movies. I think he should stick with the fantastical, the science fiction, the subconscious, like the sci-fi that plays up like crazy like aspects of the human experience. I think he should stick to that. Like I said before, this feels like a film student's exercise where it's like we want to see you do something other than your normal genre. So it's just like he applies his trademark style to something that he doesn't usually do, and this is what you get.
I want to see Nolan take his trademark style and apply it to like a fantasy film.
Like a straight up fantasy film,
Yeah,
like a sword and magic, sword and sorcery fantasy film.
Sort of. Like I want to see. I'm trying to think of how to best explain it, but like I'm not opposed to a fantasy a fantasy story set in like modern like real life, like wizards and shit, but like in 20th century like London or America or whatever. But like,
you want to see Christopher Nolan's Bright? Is that what you're saying to me?
Maybe not Bright, but something like it.
Oh my goodness.
Well, so like I want to see him take on different genres for sure. I don't think he could do horror properly. I just don't think he could. Horror requires a very fucked up way of looking at things. I think Jordan Peele has got that down. I think other directors have got that down. I don't think Christopher Nolan would have fun doing horror. I agree. I don't think it's his bag. I'd like to see him try fantasy, though. I think it's not a far cry from sci-fi. And if you set it in a modern setting or set it with, like, modern ideals in mind, he could probably have some fun doing some weird, like, meta commentary on it, for sure.
That would be interesting. I think for fantasy, as opposed to sci-fi, fantasy, the main focus is on the plot. Like, you definitely have, like, themes that the story wants to discuss and really play with. And you have, like, various, like, set pieces for society and just, like, normal people and magic and all that fun stuff. But I think the focus on most fantasy films is the plot and the characters that you're trying to tell the story with. Whereas in sci-fi, the plot is used to explore the characters and the themes of the story rather than the other way around. So it would be interesting to see him kind of flip that. I'm not sure how well he would do because, like, really getting into the subconscious and the themes of a story is really Nolan's bag. So kind of putting that to the side and focusing on the actual plot would be different, but I don't know if he'd be too good at it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, it's a curious idea I wouldn't be opposed to seeing, but probably won't happen anytime soon.
Probably not.
But as far as war pieces go, yeah, I think one and done. I'm ready to move on with other genres for him. I think if you really want a good war movie, I know Spielberg has done. I know we brought him up before, but I know Spielberg has at least two under his belt that that are knocks out of the park. They're fucking great. So I would say that's definitely his genre for sure. And I'm trying to think of some other big war movies that where directors have kind of done a really good job with it. I know Stanley Kubrick has one or two, doesn't he?
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah. So there's a few directors out there who really have it nailed down, and I don't know what they bring to the table that's so different, other than maybe just a. No, I don't want to say that they have a better reverence for what happened in those wars, because I mean you even heard in the quote from earlier that Nolan really did his history. He did his fact checking. He he didn't sugarcoat this. He really went all out and like said this was an important part of the war. So I mean, like it's not like he was like shortchanging or anything. I don't really know other than just personal style. But even then, it's like I'm not sure how Spielberg style translates to war better than Nolan style. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
So I don't know. We'd have to do some more research to find out, but it'd be something. It's an interesting thought experiment we could put on the back burner for now, for sure. Ryan, that's all I have for my questions. Is there anything you wanted to bring up at all?
I don't believe so. We did a pretty good job of covering everything in the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a short movie. It respects your time, so I mean, it wasn't too hard. If you want to reach out to us to discuss your favorite war movies, your favorite Nolan movies, or your favorite movies in general, you can reach out to us at Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, or on social media in a few different places. Find us out there and send a message. Say hello. We're cool. We'll chat back with you maybe. And if you want to reach out to us directly, no social media bullshit in the way, we have an email. Ryan, where can they go for that email?
That email is, I still don't know who the fuck Harry Styles is. Excuse me. I'm sorry. That's evacstation@gmail.com.
This is where I would quote a song from the One Direction catalog and make that a joke. I just don't know any One Direction songs.
So you don't know who the fuck Harry Styles is either. Okay,
gotcha.
Gotcha.
I think I know the one song, 'cause I remember them quoting it in Rooster Teeth a couple times. You Light Up My World or something like that, or Light Up My Life or something like that. I don't know. One of those. I don't remember. But, yeah, I don't know any of their shit. I'm honestly out of the pop music, like, sphere pretty hardcore. Like, I don't know most of the top 100 people right now. If any of them. So, I'm old, folks. Just letting you know that. Anyway.
Old fogies.
Yep.
Old fogies at gmail.com.
Listen, Ryan, I'm all about classic rock and fucking Euro metal. That's where I'm at. And of course, J-pop and J-rock. That's fun too. Anyway, final segment where we talk about the film in the review format, going from platinum to trash, all the codes in between. Ryan, I have to be honest with you. I don't think this is Nolan's best film.
No?
Don't get me wrong. I think there's an admirable attempt here. There's some really good ideas in play. And I think that with better execution, this could have been a stellar film. Hands down. And I don't think it's a bad film by any means. I just don't think it's the best war movie. I don't think it's the best Nolan film. I think it falls short in both respects.
Okay.
So, I don't really know where I want to rank this just yet. I'm thinking either silver or bronze. And it would be a very high bronze at best. Because, again, there's a lot of good stuff happening here. It's just not as well balanced and well articulated as Nolan's usual affair.
Okay. Well, this is where I get to do my typical 180. So originally when I saw this movie at first, I was not a huge fan of it like you. But seeing it the second time really has allowed me to appreciate it. Because not only like for all of the great points that you brought up with the attention, like the focus on the tension and the psychological trauma of war, the constant assault by unseen forces, and just like the scream of bombers, where you never know when one moment's going to be your last. I think like each shot in this movie, like there are several shots that look like so picturesque. They look like they look like a work of art, and each one is done with the most practical effects that they can. So it's like he's painting with real life. I absolutely adore the cinematography of this, and I think I do believe, like I back up what I say when I say that it feels like kind of an exercise for Nolan where he's stretching out of his box a bit.
Yeah.
He takes his he takes his tried and true method, his tried and true storytelling style, and he applies it to something that he's never done before. And I think it's a beautiful film. I think it's a very well done film. I don't think it's the best war film, but I do think it's like the Christopher Nolan war film, which really says something, because it shows how virtuistic Nolan is really getting in his work, because he can take a style of storytelling that he is known for and apply it to something completely different, and it doesn't lose too much in translation. So for that reason, I actually really, really like it. And actually, Quentin Tarantino has this as like his like in his top 10 movies of the past decade. Like, this is like his number 2.
See, I couldn't go that far. There's a lot of good stuff in this past decade I would have to put over this. But again,
I'm just saying, like, because I was watching a couple of interviews regarding it, trying to figure out exactly like why I liked it and whatnot, and then I saw that, so I was just like, well, damn, like, but it was because of the kind of mastercraft of filmmaking that really goes on display here. Does it necessarily fit a war theme, like a war setting? Not necessarily. Does Nolan's style better apply to other genres of film?
Of course.
I definitely agree with that. Absolutely. But I still really, really like this attempt. It's so different from any other war film that I've seen. And a Chris Nolan war film I wouldn't mind seeing another one, honestly. Like, if he did this one and done just to see if he could, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But if Nolan does another war film, I'm gonna go see it, because this was very beautiful. I would give it a silver. Me personally, I'm gonna give it a silver, because it's him stretching out of his box. It's him showing how much range he actually has. And if he does it again, I think he would only get better at it.
I think maybe my reason for going bronze more than silver, and I think I could go either way, but I think my reason is just I'm a little more biased against your typical military war films, and it's nothing against the military or war, even though one is bad and one is questionable sometimes. I would say just I've seen so many. I've desensitized to it to a point where it's like I just don't find the genre fascinating enough to me, unless it's doing something so radically different or telling something so radically interesting to me that I could get behind it. I don't think it goes in that far enough for me for that one. So
this actually surprises the hell out of me, because of the two of us, you are the history buff, so I figured this one would really be up your alley.
History is great. But I've seen so many things with war in them. It's like, okay, guys, I'm ready to move on. Can we talk about like the invention of this, or the separation of this, or women's suffrage? Can we move on?
Yeah, but they approach it in such a different and novel way, and the focus really on like the heroism not only of the soldiers that are just desperately trying to survive, but the people that come in and save them at the end of the day. Like when you have that heroic moment in a war movie, it's usually because the cavalry has come to kill a bunch of other people. But in this movie, the cavalry has come to rescue people that really considered themselves to be walking dead men. And like, it's a true triumph of the human spirit when these people drop their normal lives and go into hell to rescue these people that are supposed to be fighting on their behalf. So I'm like, I completely understand where you're coming from, and that you're tired of war movies. I just think that coming at this one from such a different angle really elevates it for me personally.
Right. And that's why, like I said, I'm very borderline silver bronze. I could easily lean silver depending on if I saw it again and give it a really thorough look now that I know how it all connects and all that stuff. I could probably see myself changing up pretty quickly. So I like I said, either way for me. But compared to some of the other ones I've seen, and again, Gonna bring up the old Grave of Fireflies. It's a hard sell against some of that stuff. It's a hard sell against some of that stuff.
Well, they're not all Grave of Fireflies.
No, very few movies are. Very few movies are. Even my favorite movie, Jurassic Park, is not a Grave of Fireflies.
Yep.
It's a far cry from it, honestly. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. However you choose to ingest this film podcast. Next week, I don't know what you're getting. You might be getting Tenet. You might be getting Birds of Prey. If it hasn't already come out. I'm not sure of the schedule at the moment. I know there's a little bit of overlap, but you might be getting both this week or something like that. I don't know. But if Tenet is not out next week, expect your Ladies of Film to open on a proper day, Friday, for YouTube, and Wednesday for Patreon, and I guess for every other platform is also Friday schedule. But other than that, though, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming out here. And whatever comes out next week, we will definitely see you after the credits.
Bye.